valued clients, colleagues past and present, members of the media. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all here to the Four Seasons, Westcliff, and to Goldman Sachs' South Africa conference. It is always wonderful to be here at this iconic hotel. The 125-year history of the surrounding suburb is almost as old as the city itself, with the rugged cliffs providing panoramic views of the sprawling city to the south and to the north. Using the Westcliff as a metaphor, I decided to divide my opening remarks into three parts: the rock, the view, and the cliff. Part one, the rock. Between a rock and a hard place. The Navy SEALs have a saying, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. When we last convened this conference 5 years ago, it coincided with the first case of COVID-19 in South Africa. Back then, you wouldn't have heard mention of hybrid working, the Magnificent Seven, meme stocks, higher for longer, or ChatGPT. In the intervening period, we thankfully dispensed with the word transitory as it related to inflation, but the rest is still very much with us. Rolling forward to today, we continue to live in the age of US exceptionalism. US GDP is now close to $30 trillion, and our research team forecasts 2.3% growth this year. The S&P 500 is at all-time highs, despite recent market volatility, trading on a forward PE of 22 times. 29% of the $50 trillion market cap is represented by the Magnificent Seven stocks, who contributed a staggering 75% of all earnings growth in 2024. Four companies, Amazon, Alphabet, Microsoft, and Meta, will spend $300 billion on AI-related capex in 2025, the market cap of Coca-Cola. And NVIDIA, which experienced an unprecedented single-day market fall in late January, wiping out $600 billion of value, recovered almost all that value in a matter of a few weeks. And as we saw yesterday, 80% earnings growth is not sufficient for the market. We continue to see the rise of retail investors, now 25% of total US equities trading volume and a material proportion of off-exchange trading. This group has become increasingly consequential and influential, challenging traditional models of price discovery given a proclivity for momentum and sentiment. The shift from public to private markets and the rise of private capital investing continues at a staggering pace. Over the past 5 years, we've seen a 160% increase in total global assets under management to $24 trillion. This market has proven a viable alternative, deferring IPOs and disintermediating traditional lenders, delivering huge liquidity and returns in the form of private credit. The private markets are, however, still the purview of the few, leading to some suggesting parallels with the 1920s and the time before the public markets democratized. Market performance has, however, not been uniform. The momentum in the US is stark contrast to Europe, China, and here in South Africa, where economic growth and equity market performance has been more than underwhelming. Notwithstanding the market environment, the tectonic plates in global affairs are shifting, with risk and uncertainty again rising. There remain 40% or $6 trillion more in the world today than 2019. The US national debt now stands at $36 trillion, a third more over the same time period. Another $1 trillion is added to that debt pile every 120 days. The entire South African national debt every 2 months. We're experiencing more conflicts now than at any time since the end of World War II, with geopolitical trade tensions increasingly challenging 3 decades of globalization. Whether 2025 is destined to join 1914, 1936, 1947, and 1989 in redefining the world order or simply recalibrating it remains to be seen. Gold has reached record highs as geopolitical tensions rise and unabated central bank buying continues. Concerningly, poverty levels, on decline for many decades, are starting to rise for the first time since the end of the Cold War. Part 2, the view, a bird's eye view. Author Roald Dahl said, "Those who don't believe in magic will never find it." Last year, South Africa held its 7th national general elections and celebrated 30 years of democracy. I believe history will smile on the events in May and June 2024, and all of us take it for granted. Highly contested elections were once again declared free and fair. The majority of ordinary South Africans, despite their hardships, again said no to the extremes on both the far right and the far left. The Liberation Party lost its majority for the first time in the democratic era. Despite that, the election result was respected. A peaceful transition sought. A cross-party deal struck to elect a speaker and a president in accordance with the Constitution. And a government of national unity was formed within a month. Unprecedented in Africa, unprecedented in the world. Expectations of the GNU and the new dispensation it ushered in were very high indeed, and rightly so. Allocators of capital were lining up to reinvest. All that was needed was GNU stability, the first signs of growth, and more progress in combating crime and corruption. We're still on that journey. Part 3, the cliff, stepping back from the cliff's edge. Author Ben Horowitz said, the hard thing about hard things is that there's no formula for dealing with them. The country is gripped with the enormous task of structural reform, with increasing coordination between the public and private sectors and all parts of civil society. Much is spoken and written about South Africa's huge natural endowment, the resilience and creativity of its people, and its immense potential. If we do indeed return to 1.5% or above GDP growth this year, a growth rate not seen for more than a decade, the country will feel like a different place. It would, however, only be a first small step on our journey. Our challenges are still significant and manifest. Whilst multilateral coordination and collaboration must continue, it will be increasingly important for South Africa to chart its own course with its own vision. Our sophisticated capital markets, banking and monetary policy system, judiciary, higher education institutions, and geolocation remain the bedrock. If we foster regulatory and policy certainty, make progress in important structural reform, and harness the opportunities presented by renewable energy, financial technology, digital infrastructure, agriculture and critical minerals, we will unleash the much-needed growth that we now need. Now could indeed be South Africa's time. This week marked the launch of the B20, which is the business initiative coinciding with South Africa's G20 presidency and summit taking place in November this year. The theme is solidarity, inclusivity, sustainability. The B20 added inclusive growth and prosperity through cooperation. Yesterday, the President set out the country's priorities for the G20 presidency. This is a significant opportunity, and once again, the eyes of the world will be on South Africa. I'm confident that the country will shine. The price of greatness is responsibility, said Winston Churchill. So to conclude, Goldman Sachs has a proud history in South Africa and has maintained a consistent presence here since the mid-1990s and the birth of democracy. Last year, we proudly marked the 5th anniversary of the establishment of the Johannesburg branch of Goldman Sachs International Bank, one of only a handful of licensed banks for the firm outside of the US. Then, as now, we remain resolute in our commitment to helping the country, you as our important clients, and being a leader in cross-border capital markets. We have a rich and thought-provoking agenda for you this morning. We hope that you enjoy it. You will hear from the best of Goldman Sachs. I want to express my thanks and gratitude to you all for joining us and to our amazing team for pulling this all together. I'm going to pause there, and in a short moment we will be joined by Richard Gnodde, who's the Vice Chairman of Goldman Sachs. He will be in conversation with the President, Cyril Ramaphosa. Thank you very much.
Well, good morning, everybody. It really gives me great pleasure to welcome you all here this morning, but in particular, President Ramaphosa, thank you very much for joining us. You've always been a huge supporter of these sorts of events, interaction with your investors. The President asked me when we were sitting down earlier whether this was a collection of our clients. I said they're a collection of both of our clients, because as investors in South Africa, you're also the President's clients. But anyway, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. We're going to have a discussion over the next 45 minutes, hopefully cover the important topics of the day, and clearly there are many. But maybe let's just start here in South Africa, Mr. President, the government of national unity. I must say the world was impressed, amazed, surprised at the speed with which you put that coalition together and the speed with which you've got working. But obviously now you're many months into this. I'm sure it's settled down. Just if you could give the group an indication of how it's working, and maybe some of the key priorities that you're focused on.
Well, no, thank you very much, Richard. I mean, your clients, my clients, but you get better money out of them than after the outcome of the elections, as we all know, we had to form a government of national unity. And the choices that we had as the ANC was to go into opposition and sit on the backbenches for the first time in 30 years, or to give leadership, which we've been doing over many years. And we chose the latter and had very hard decisions within the party, because this was a new era for all of us. A defeat of this nature was a bit hard to swallow. But in the end, we all agreed that the best thing to do was to put the interests of the country first and the citizens of South Africa, by working with others and working with those we considered our mortal enemies, that even if we had to sit down with them around a table, with them having some daggers on their sides, it was important to form a government of national unity. We're rather pleased that we were able to do so within a short space of time, within 30 days really, and beat records of more established and older democracies like in Europe and all that. But it's opened a new era for us, new opportunities, and we started having a sense of the positivity that started spreading throughout the country. Ordinary citizens welcomed this, as well as, I would say, the markets, and there was some buoyancy, I would say, in people's hearts, as well as, I think, in the markets. So it injected a great deal of hope, rather than the complacency and the fear about the future. But there's still a lot of work that needs to be done to navigate our way to a better future, where there'll be growth, where we'll reduce unemployment and deal with the monster of poverty in our country. So it's been, and it's holding. We've gone through a few very difficult challenges where ideological differences were very stark, but we've been able to go through them rather smoothly, although there are still some issues that need to be addressed. And right now we are in the throes of seeking to address the differences over the budget. And I keep telling my colleagues, and indeed South Africans, that our differences are not fatal. There are governments that have fallen and broken apart over budgets, and so this shows that we are a maturing democracy where there has to be consensus that should be built around the budget. In the past, it was just one party that crafted the budget and presented it to Parliament and to the country. now we've got to mediate around nine different views and find consensus, which is precisely what we are going to seek to find.
How is that process going to work in terms of resolving the budget issue? What's your sort of timeline? How do you, I know you're in a negotiation now, so you don't want to put a deadline at the end of it, but...
There is some deadline. The drop dead date is the 12th of March. That's when the budget has to be put to the nation. So there are negotiations that are going on. And I would say healthy form of negotiations where we are beginning in many, many ways to look at the trade-offs. Because when you have a challenging fiscal situation that we have now, where your revenues have not gone to the levels that you wanted to fund a number of priorities or ambitions, you've got to do deals. You've got to do trade-offs and say what's important now and what can be done later, and lay emphasis on growing the economy, but at the same time do a balance and look after the interests of the people of South Africa, where our unemployment rate is one of the highest in the world.
And so maybe just coming to that in terms of priorities for the government, this jobs question, which really touches the other issues you talked about, because obviously jobs, growth, poverty, it's all connected. But just focusing on jobs, what are the initiatives? How are you going to address this challenge?
Well, jobs has been a challenge that we've had over many years in South Africa, and there was one time, I think it was in the early 80s, 2008 or so, when we had a real good spike in job creation. And beyond the financial crisis, we've just seen job creation scaling down. So we've got a long-term problem with jobs. But what we have decided is to embark on a number of initiatives. One of the problems that is holding us back is the reforms that have not really been embarked upon for the longest time. We now have embarked on a number of reforms, particularly in our key network industries, the industries that really move and shape and shake the economy. For instance, electricity. For the longest time, our electricity architecture was really sort of one of the very old-fashioned ones, and we've restructured that and created competition, particularly when it comes to generation. And that, in many ways, happened in the wake of the electricity challenges that we had. And we had to push that forward. And that in itself has opened up huge investments for renewables, particularly in the Northern Cape, which is well endowed with great radiation, some of the best in the world. And we're looking at wind around the coastal areas. And it's spawned a new industry. So that is growing, and it's a result of the restructuring that we have embarked upon. Eskom is being rebuilt, and we put together a transmission company, and we are now doing what many countries in the world have done. So that reform of the electricity architecture of our country is standing us in good stead, because a lot of money is being invested in electricity. We're now looking at logistics and rail and our ports. Some of our ports used to be some of the best in the world, and they declined over time. And we're now rebuilding them, bringing in the private sector. So in electricity, we bring in the private sector to generate. And in the logistics, we're doing exactly the same thing. And private sector is now going to play a key role. And one of the overriding reasons is that the private sector has the money to invest. But we're making it more competitive as well. Because for the longest time, there's been one monopoly that generates and distributes electricity or transmits electricity. There's been one monopoly that runs our rail, that runs our port, and we're loosening that monopoly entity's hands to be able to ensure that we get more participants. And that in itself is going to bring in more investment, more innovation, more technology, and we will be able to see our ports going to a higher level.
So I know you were as frustrated as anyone in terms of how long the transformation of Eskom took to get to the place you're at now. In terms of lessons learned that you could roll across some of these other sectors, because obviously speed is important here. What are the lessons learned from the Eskom experience?
Well, the lessons is you've got to straight line or your regulatory processes and be able to move faster and reposition the entities to a point where investors can find great attraction in coming to participate, and where they can come and make money. That's obviously what investors would like to do. But we've also been focusing now on infrastructure. We're seeing infrastructure as a big driver of job creation as well. Our infrastructure has become quite dilapidated in a number of areas, but there are new areas where we can boost infrastructure, and the infrastructure investment, we almost at 940 billion rand in the medium term that we want to invest. But in that as well, we want to work with the private sector. We want to have solid public-private partnerships. But the other important thing for us as a country is having refashioned the ability to work with business. Some of these reforms were largely driven by government and business, and to some extent labor as well. So working together with business has enabled us to get to this point. For instance, they kept raising issues like work visas. We had the most archaic visa regime where it was virtually difficult for a CEO of a global company to come and live in South Africa, and they would have to wait for 2, 3, 4 years. And we've loosened that, and we've gotten rid of the backlog, and we made our visa application process a lot easier to attract tourists from China, from India, and a number of other places.
So just so this group can start doing the work ahead of time, because this is where the investment is going to come from.
Yes.
Your vision, so you talk about ports, you talk about Transnet more broadly. What is your vision? So if we're thinking sort of 5, 10 years down the road, is the port in Durban, the port in Cape Town, many of the railway lines owned by private sector operators, with 25-year concessions? Is that the direction of travel?
The direction is the state will continue to own, but we will concession out quite a number of these over a number of years. And we found that works, and we've done it in the past. For instance, the road network from Johannesburg to Durban was really a public-private partnership initiative that has worked very well for us. So we're not first-time participants in this. We just kind of forgot how well it works in the past. We now need to recalibrate that and get down to working well with the private sector and packaging all these, and quite a number of packages we can put in place. But there is, as I told you earlier, another problem, because we find that even as we can concession a port, and we have done so in one instance now, the bidders, who are largely private sector bidders, they will lose us, then start fighting. They take the whole process to court, and the whole initiative is frozen for years while they fight in court. So they fight for a honeypot. But you then said, well, maybe create many more honeypots so that they don't have to fight over one.
Get them focused on the next opportunity.
Yeah, that's precisely what we are seeking to do, to create as many opportunities where the private sector can participate. I would ever say that through concessioning and through smart private-public partnerships, which we have done in the past for some major big-ticket projects, we've found that it does pay dividends for both the state as well as the private sector. And we want to do this in a number of areas, either building big dams and building roads and rail networks and getting the private sector to come and play the key role that they know best of running enterprises that can be of help.
Just another issue that investors would obviously focus on, and we touched on this earlier, but the labour markets, labour law, its competitiveness on a global basis. How do you, and obviously it's important to bring labour along with you in all of these discussions, otherwise it doesn't work.
Yeah.
But where are we in that journey?
Well, our labour laws are quite advanced, and they are a product of what we had to deal with in the past. And in many, many ways, as South Africa, we're finding that the legacies of the past, what holds us back and what we have to deal with. So when it comes to labour, we have made great advances, and working people have really good conditions of employment that are fair, that are equitable. But at the same time, we find that we are able to have good agreements with labour. They are not unreasonable. I mean, if proper opportunities are put before them, I don't find them unreasonable. We are able to mediate whatever differences that we have with them. And we've sought to make them partners at moments of, say, challenge. For instance, when things became a bit difficult, whether we would stay in AGOA or not, the American free trade opportunity, we took labor along with us, and government and business. And it was interesting that it was business that said, don't leave them behind, bring them along because they're a key stakeholder. So on the labor front, it's always very difficult and tough to negotiate with labor because they want to advance the interests of their own members, but we want to advance the interests of the country. So we do have fairly good relations with labor. And of course, people often raise issues of labor market laws and all that, and we're able to mediate that.
So you're comfortable it's competitive?
It's very competitive, yeah, very competitive.
Let's talk about, and we'll come back to the US in a moment, but let's just talk about the new economy and artificial intelligence, the need for data centers, computing power, really making sure that this economy is fit to compete in the century ahead. How is your government thinking about those challenges? Well, and obviously, which all requires a lot of investment, but also creates huge opportunity.
Yeah, we've crafted what I would say a very good and modern artificial intelligence policy, and I think many have found our digital policy regime very attractive. A number of companies have come to invest in South Africa to set up their data centers, business processing companies, and we've become, I would say, the most attractive on the continent, with major companies like Amazon and Google setting up massive data centers in Cape Town, in Johannesburg. So on that score, we are doing well. When I was in Davos, I met the CEO, global CEO of Microsoft. They want to come to South Africa. So when it comes to that, we become a real center of attraction. Much as at the beginning we had energy challenges, and they were able to navigate their way around that, but set up really good data centers, and also these centers where you have the answering service, the global
Call centers.
Yeah, call centers. Yeah. And they have this notion that the British colonized that in such a way that the English that South Africans speak is understandable around the world. So colonizers.
They did some good.
So call centers replete throughout the country, and they are global call centers. Young people are getting employed in those, and this is where our new education system is of great benefit as well, because young people are getting attracted into all these job opportunities.
I mean, you talk about the CEO of Microsoft. You obviously speak to a lot of CEOs around the world who are looking at the country.
Yeah.
What are the issues that they raise with you in terms of investing? What do they want you to do to make this more attractive?
Well, the one issue they've raised is, and obviously we would like you to address the energy issue, which we are addressing, address the visa issue so that we can bring our top executives to come and work here, and also address the issue of crime, which we are now taking great steps to address, and the regulatory framework. Those are issues that are part and parcel of our reform agenda. And as I said, our reform agenda is not a government sole responsibility. We're executing that with the private sector. When we're dealing with the private sector when it comes to issues like corruption. We're able to have a team that looks at corruption and what needs to be done, corruption from the state sector as well as corruption from the private sector. And for instance, we work together on getting South Africa out of the grey list. There are a number of people from the private sector and government who sit down and look at what needs to be done and how we can bring about the amendments and the changes to our legal framework to get out of the grey list. So it's an integrated, a wonderfully integrated process. I'm yet to come across a country where national issues and challenges are addressed in an integrated and consensual manner like we have. When I went to Davos, I said one of the models that we are able to showcase to the world is how over many years we've been able to address problems working together with the key stakeholders, including civil society, because we don't leave them behind because they have a very key role to play. And one of the ways in which we sort of showcase this model is that it's legislated. We've got a legislative entity that in a way encourages us to work together. So
I must say, I'd share that view. It's really striking when one is here, the collaboration. If you look at President Xi last Monday, he has a showcase event to show the world that he actually likes his private sector.
Yes.
You would never have to do that. I think everybody understands, this partnership is a very strong, hugely important partnership.
well, we do. I mean, for a country and a president to have 130 CEOs coming forward and saying, we want to sign up on how we can take this country forward and do so in one go, and be able to say we're supporting what government is doing, and we want to even put money behind it to enable all these reforms to speed up. That is one of the better things that you can ever want to say.
So let's talk about an important negotiation that you've got coming up in a couple of months. Maybe it's not a couple of months, I don't know when it'll be. At some point you're going to need to sit down with President Trump and reset our relationship, South Africa's relationship with the United States. How are you thinking about that process? And I know that this is still work in progress, but just to give, it's an important topic, give the group a sense of where you are.
Yeah, I'm very positively inclined to promoting a good relationship with President Trump. Soon after he was elected, I called him and was it the other way around? We both wanted to talk, and I think he called or whatever. So we chatted. We chatted, and
So he paid for the call. That's the important thing.
we chatted, and I congratulated him and reminded him that we are now joined at the hip, because America is the United States is the next president of the G20. So I said, Mr. President, I'm going to hand over to you. So we're now in a troika together, and I'd like you to come to South Africa for a state visit when you come to attend a G20 meeting. And he said, oh, that would be great. And we spoke about a number of South Africans that he knows who play golf, because he loves his golf. And he asked me whether I play.
Are you practicing?
I said yes. He said, well, you better practice. And we spoke about how to continue improving the relations on the trade side and all that. And it was a wonderful few minutes call then. But of course, it all seemed to go a little bit off the rails, because he was responding to an initiative that we put in place about addressing the original sin in South Africa, which is the issue of land. And he got the wrong end of the stick, because some people whispered to him that we're taking land from people and there's some genocide and all that, which is all not true. So he issued his executive acts, and we then decided that it's not best to have a knee-jerk reaction to all this. We wanted to let the dust settle, and I'm kind of like that. I prefer the dust to settle, and thereafter work out ways in which you can respond to what has happened. And clearly, South Africa and the United States, apart from the G20, we are joined at the hip. They are our second biggest trading partner. And we are participants in AGOA, and we export very important products to them. And so we also buy important products. So it's an interconnected world. We've got to deal with each other whether we like it or not, and we've got to look at other policy positions that we may differ on. And so it is my considered view that we've got to make a deal of one sort or another on trade issues, on diplomatic issues, on political issues, a whole span of issues. It is in South Africa's interest to promote a good relationship with all countries in the world, and also the United States, and more so that we're going to be working closely together on the G20 process.
Look, in some ways it's an opportunity. Maybe there's a scope for a bigger deal. He likes to do big deals, doesn't he?
Yes, we would like to go to the United States to do a deal. We don't want to go and explain ourselves. We want to go and do a meaningful deal with the United States on a whole range of issues. And the signals that we're getting are that we need to enable the development of that process to happen, and it's inevitable that we will get together and do a deal. Yeah.
We'll all be watching. Good luck. Let's talk about the G20.
Yes.
You're obviously going to be working in your leadership position of the G20 through much of the balance of this year.
Yeah.
What are your priorities? What are your objectives? What do you want to get the group to really focus on?
Well, we crafted a theme, our theme, and every country that leads the G20 for the year comes up with a theme of what they believe they want the world to focus on. And we've said we believe that we need to heighten the issue of solidarity, because no country exists on its own. And we need to act in solidarity of one another. And we clearly saw that during COVID, where solidarity was needed, where certain countries had more vaccines and others didn't. And it was when we continued to make calls that let's support one another, that the process then started. So it's actualizing the notion and the concept of solidarity. And we do believe that the issue of equality is important. There's a lot of inequality in countries and between countries, and we would like the world to address the issue of inequality. And the other important issue is sustainability. And sustainability touches on issues of climate change, which we can no longer just wish away, and seeing how best we do things on a sustainable basis. So under the rubric of those three themes, we have then developed what we see as priorities. What are the real priorities? And the one issue that really stands out is financing for climate change. The financing which has been discussed in Paris and a number of places, the COP conferences, has not really come to the fore, and we would like a serious conversation among the G20 countries to deal with climate financing. But as a byproduct of that, we do believe that there should be the other issue of financing damage that keeps recurring. Many countries, particularly in the global south or in Africa, keep having damage from climate change, from floods and fires and all that, and they keep happening year in and year out. So we would like that to be a conversation, and more importantly for us is also to discuss the issue of the debt. Many countries, not only in the global south, in Africa, are suffering under huge burdens of debt. Developing economy countries pay up to 8 times for their debt more than your more developed nations. And these are countries that need better assistance and support. When we were going through the COVID process, I was chairman of the African Union, and one of the issues we highlighted was the issues of debt. It was when the global financial institutions, particularly the IMF, was going to be issuing special drawing rights, enabling your big economies to have cheaper debt. And that was not made available to your more developing countries. And we argued that it should be, the amount was raised quite a bit. And so therefore debt in our book is important. And the last and the other priority that we want to address is how the minerals, the critical minerals, should be treated, and how the world should start interfacing with minerals. Do we continue being extractive economies for minerals, or do we now move to, say, the secondary level, from the primary, secondary, and eventually tertiary, where we beneficiate our minerals? And on this we speak on behalf of Africa, because Africa is the one place where the whole world is just clamoring to extract minerals. And we say,
you want to go up the value chain.
We want to go up the value chain. There's another process that we need to embark upon.
Could I just very quickly, because I know we're running out of time, I just touch on, and these are obviously important relationships, the relationship with China, the relationship with Russia.
Yes.
President Trump seems to be building a better relationship with Russia. So things move around.
Yes.
But from South Africa's perspective, touch on one or two of these other global relationships.
Our approach in terms of our international policy has always been to play a neutral role. and to be non-aligned. And we've played that role throughout. And there are moments when people think that we side with one against the other. But now it's almost becoming more evident that our non-alignment is what is much more appreciable. For instance, we participated in the African Peace Initiative with relation to the Russia-Ukraine war. And in that case, we showed that we are non-aligned. We went to Ukraine, we went to Russia, and over time, as South Africa, we've participated in the peace process between Russia and the Ukraine, up to and including just playing a very focused role, for instance, when it came to the release of children. It was only South Africa, really, in some ways working with the United States, of getting the children released. In a very focused way, going through the names and the areas where they were. And that role has continued. And that, in many ways, has demonstrated our non-alignment. As it is now, we are pushing ahead with a peace summit. We say that war can only be resolved through a peace process. And we talk to both. I remember one time I went to meet President Biden in the White House, and he said, well, can you talk to both of them? And I said, yes, because in the end, at some stage, I think we're one of the very few who could talk to both. And as just now, President Zelensky will be coming, and we will be putting...
Coming here?
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll be putting the same message that that conflict needs to be resolved through negotiations. Initially, he had put conditions, but over time, in working through and working with him in discussions, it's becoming more and more evident that that war must end, and it can only end through a negotiation process. And we have said as much to President Putin, we've said as much to President Zelensky as well. And on the African continent, we continue to play an unaligned role as well, and a peacemaker in many of the areas where there are conflicts. So globally, we are a small player, and some people say that we punch above our weight, and some people say we're too noisy. And maybe we are noisy, but we seek to craft peace, but we also seek to advance the interests of South Africans, particularly when it comes to trade, when it comes to investment. And through this, we want to continue being an attractive destination.
Maybe a final question, just on China, South Africa's relationship with China, but also just the role of China across the African continent. And
well, China has decided to be a big player on the African continent, that we must accept. And we have a very good relationship with China. They are our biggest trading partner as we speak. We sell a lot more to China than to other countries, but we also import a lot from China. And the trade at the moment is a bit unbalanced, and we need to work on that. But they are open and they want to deal with us. And we deal with each other out of deep respect for each other's sovereign standing. So other people get terrified and think that China is going to overwhelm us. But what I have found is the Chinese have great dealings with us out of respect and are able to support us. During COVID, they were hugely supportive when it came to acquisition of personal protective equipment as well as vaccines. And we continue to work very well with them. Of course, they have spread themselves in other places on the continent. They invest in our economy as well in quite a big way.
Well, Mr. President, I must thank you. I know I've got to keep you on schedule. You've got a busy day, but thank you very much. Just your willingness to come and participate in an event like this, to talk to investors, is a fantastic sign. So, thank you for that. And I'm struck by many things you said, but if I had to focus on one, it is really the strength of the public-private relationship and And you very frequently in your comments today, you've talked about the role of the private sector, the importance of the private sector. And if I interpret what you've said, that is only going to grow in the future here. You're going to look for more private sector involvement in some of the infrastructure aspects of the economy and beyond. So, I think there's going to be a lot for everybody to do here. And thank you very much for your time.
No, thank you very much for the opportunity. And as I look around, I just see money, I smell it. And if I had the opportunity, I would touch each one of you. It would rub off onto the hands of many South Africans. But thank you very much for your continued interest as investors and as people who are interested in South Africa. We are on a really great journey. We're moving forward in many, many ways, and your support, your continued interest is really what is going to add a lot of steroids to what we do. So thank you very much. It has been good talking to you as well.
Well, thank you.
Okay.